All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Underscore. So, Underscore is a monthly webinar series that Intellum hosts, and the idea is just to gather together as education professionals and learn from each other. So, we're thinking about things that are top of mind for you, and then bringing in experts and content to help you do your job better. And this month, we're talking about the learner experience. And I think the learner experience is really interesting because it's almost this intangible thing that's made up of some parts technology and some parts kind of how we design our content, our education programs. And so we're going to walk through some of that today, make the invisible visible, if you will. So my name is Shannon Howard. I'm the director of customer and content marketing here. Also on the call, I have Jordan Hopkins. Maybe give a wave, say hi, Jordan.
Hey everybody, I'm Jordan. Work with Intellum as an education program manager, and this is like a special place in my heart as a topic. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. And we have Tia as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tia. I can't wait to chat with you all today. Let us know if you have any questions in the chat, and I'll see you all at the end for Q&A.
Awesome. And all right, so little housekeeping as we get started. First up, this webinar is being recorded. So if you have to hop off halfway, don't worry, we'll get the recording to your inbox. Or if you just wanted to go back and look at things again. There are closed captions available. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a little CC button. Click on that and you can look at the closed captioning as we go. I would ask that you use the Q&A box also at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. So as we're going, if you have specific questions, feel free to pop them in there and we'll do a Q&A at the end of the webinar. And then also the chat is open. We want to hear from you, right? This is not us like one way trying to engage with you. We want to hear from you. So I'll give you a second here before we dive in. And feel free just to open that chat box. I think it defaults to hosts and panelists. So just switch over to everyone and say hello, introduce yourself, let us know where you're calling in from. So I'm calling in from Black Mountain, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville. Jordan, where are you?
Sunny Tampa, Florida.
And Tia?
Ironically, I'm 5 minutes away from Jordan in sunny Tampa, Florida.
There you go. Awesome. And let's see in the chat. Yeah. Okay. Snowy Toronto, London, NYC. Awesome. So kind of global peeps on today, which is awesome. Okay. So we're going to dive right in. Any other Princess Bride fans out there, feel free to sound off in the chat. I know this is hands down one of my favorite moments in the movie. But if we start with this idea of what is the learner experience, right? If we're making the invisible visible, let's define it. So the Association for Talent Development, or ATD, we're probably mostly familiar with them. So they talk about the learner experience being engagement, collaboration, application, and meeting the learner where they are in their different moments of learning need. So when you think about the learner journey as a whole, people are not just learning in one fell swoop, right? They're not just learning when they become a customer or when they become an admin of your product. They're learning at every stage of their journey. And they're learning as new things come out or as they have a need to increase their skills, maybe as their permissions change. And so we want to think about that kind of end-to-end learner journey and how the learner experiences all of that, and not just one period of time, and also not just one individual event or piece of content. So for example, we host these webinars and we want to look kind of holistically across all of our different types of education content, not just, at this one place. And so I thought I'd share, once upon a time, a UX designer shared this with me. I actually thought it was like pretty enlightening, so I figured I'd share it here. So he told me that a good user experience is not noticeable. So you just don't notice it at all. You're just using something, it works exactly the way that you thought that it would, and all is good in the world. You actually don't even realize that there's an experience happening. The only time that we realize that an experience is happening is when it does not go the way that it's supposed to, right? So you try to log in and you can't, you try to find something and you can't, you bump into some kind of obstacle along the way. And that's when we start to realize, okay, there's something behind this. So a great learner experience is really happening more in the background. And there are some things, again, that technology can do and that you can do to kind of help that to seamlessly be happening. And Jordan, Tia, anything else that you would add just on overall learner experience?
I think a lot of times we think about the in the middle of the experience as being crucial, but a lot of times that before, like something simple as like, do they have access to the web conferencing tool? Do they have access to the technology to learn it? Do they have the materials they need? Do they have the support? Like sometimes that kind of stuff, if it's those things are missing, it really highlights the experience is not that great. So I think the before is super important also, which I'm sure we'll tackle more later in the webinar.
Yeah. All right. So if we think about some things we're going to talk about today, here's what it is at a high level. Some of these are going to be like, well, no duh. Obviously, we want things to be easy to use. We want to have intuitive design, a consistent layout. We want things to be accessible, learner focused, and we want to personalize the learning experience. We're going to dive into each of these more. So the first one is ease of use, and this is exactly what it sounds like. Is this easy to use? And some things we want to think through here are around discoverability of content. Is the learner able to find what they're looking for? Maybe they know what they're looking for, maybe they don't. So is it easy for them to kind of stumble upon something that might be of interest to them? Or, if they're looking for something in particular, are they able to find it in your platform? We also want to be able to provide learners with the opportunity to search, right? So we live in a search world. If people are looking for answers, they're going to a search tool. And we can also think about this in terms of filters and topics. Are people able to kind of filter based on the type of learning content? Like they know they want to do a certification, or they know they're looking for a help article. And are they able to filter by topic if they know that there's a particular thing that they need or want to learn about? And so I'm a big fan of practical examples. I always want to see like, what does great look like? So these are some examples in the wild, right? So if we think about, so this is a screenshot of one of our versions of our platform. And so if you notice here, you have that search bar in the top, right? So in the bottom, I can kind of see there's like at the top, this navigation. So there's different types of learning, different types of opportunities for me to engage. I can see kind of what's coming up. Sometimes here you'll also see kind of recommended for you, maybe even assigned learning. I'll show you some examples of that later. But I also have this ability to search for what it is that I'm looking for, or search by topic as well. So those are some things that we think about when we think about, is it easy to use? And then Jordan and Tia, again, ask you both if you have anything that you would add when you think about, is something easy to use? Is your learner experience easy to kind of navigate?
One thing I think about is learners always need a way to locate themselves in their learning. So are you at the beginning of your learning? Are you in the middle? Are you at the end? How much longer do you have to go? Everybody is moving so fast. You don't want to be locked into anything that you can't jump out of. So when I think of ease of use, I also think of location, like making sure learners can easily locate themselves. How do I bookmark this? How do I exit and how do I get back to it? How do I easily find it? So that search box that you're pointing to at the top is really crucial for ease of use.
And I do have an example of that as well. We'll be able to see my progress or lack thereof in a course that I'm enrolled in right now. So another part of discoverability too, oh, I put here topic so you could kind of see how that bumps out, is, how do I know if something's easy to use? And so we all have different levels of proficiency in different platforms. And we want to make sure that when we think of something, is it easy to use? Not just do I think it's easy to use, right? But does my learner think that it's easy to use? And so this starts with obviously understanding, who are your learners? Where are they coming from? What's their background? What's their familiarity, maybe with a learning management system or with engaging with learning content? What are they used to? And some ways that we can start to understand from the learner's perspective, how easy is this to use, is through things like user testing. So I did this even around like content organization for a program that I ran, where we walked real learners through and we said, okay, now imagine you're trying to find a certification on X topic. Where would you go to find that? Or how would you find that? Imagine you're trying to learn about this topic. Where would you go? Like, where would you expect to find that? And that taught us a lot about, how they use the main navigation, how they use filters, how they use topics, how they think about content type versus topic itself. You can also use a tool like Hotjar. So this kind of lays over your platform and it's tracking user behavior anonymously on the page. And so you can see, are people scrolling down the page and then scrolling back up because they didn't find what they were looking for? Or are they kind of clicking somewhere where they expect to be able to click, but it's not really going anywhere? So that's really interesting. Or if you're using a tool like Google Analytics 4, you can track kind of behavior flows. So where do they start and where do they go? Which that can be really interesting as well to kind of understand not just how do I expect them to navigate through their learning journey, but how are they actually going from one thing to the next? What does their learning journey actually look like? All right, so the next component is intuitive design. And I actually have here a poll, but because the poll part is hidden, here we go. I'm gonna have to pull it up. All right, so the first question I'm gonna ask you is, where do you expect to find your profile page? You log into a platform, where are you finding that profile page? I'll give you all a second to respond to that. I know you came on today and you thought I could passively be in the background. I can just check my email. I'm doing this. Cool. All right. So I'm seeing a pretty strong response here around we expect to see it in the upper right-hand corner, right? We're familiar with that. When we log into a platform, we expect to be able to go to the upper right-hand corner and we're going to be able to either like directly link to our profile or see it in the drop down there. All right. Oh, some of you are answering the next question. I did not realize, to be completely honest, they would both go at the same time. So my other question is, where do you expect to find the search bar? And 88% of people are saying in the top bar, and some people are saying in the main navigation. And because I did not know, I was just going to give you like, this is what I would consider to be the main navigation, kind of a side menu or bump out on the page itself or in this like top bar. But yeah, y'all totally, here you go. You should be able to see your results here. And I think we're pretty much, yeah, 86% we expected the profile to be in the upper right-hand corner here. You can't click on slide, Shannon. And then where do you expect to find the search bar? We expect to find it, at the top of the page, right? So when we think about intuitive design, we think about, are people finding things where they expect to find them? And so generally speaking, we have this idea, right? Because we've used some type of technology probably of where, these different elements are going to be. We have an idea of where we can expect to find things because most platforms are laid out this way. And so this is an aspect of the learner experience where maybe you hopefully don't have to think about this so much, right? Your learning management system, your learning experience platform, whatever you're using, it should have this built in, right? It should have best practices built in terms of intuitive design so people can find very easily what they're looking for because it's where they expect it to be, right? And so this is where I think really leaning on that expertise of those learning platforms to design that UX experience, or that's redundant, that UX, so that people can find things easily. But where I think you do have some opportunity here is really in the design itself. So if we think about those tiles, maybe that are in a course catalog or on your homepage, you have some opportunity here to customize things but also to be like to help people get used to how things are organized, right? So this is, I did work with the UX designer once upon a time, and this is how we help to familiarize people with different types of content. So you'll notice the certifications were in pink, courses and series. So a course is just one part of a series or a learning path. Those are in orange. A survey or report is a different type of content. It's a different color. But these are e-learning content. So they all have that same icon. This is different. It has a different icon, right? So this is an element of the learner experience that you have maybe some more control over. And another thing that we can be thinking about is how do we help people visually understand what it is that they're looking at? Jordan, Tia, anything to add on kind of that intuitive aspect of design?
Well, we had a great question come in. Someone asked, like, well, where do you find the line between a learner experience and user interface? And a lot of people have to have like the role title of a learning experience designer. And of course, there's some crossover between our roles. Absolutely. Like a good instructional designer should be thinking about the UX or user experience for it. For me, I do feel like learner experience, though, is maybe a little broader. It includes not only like their experience with the content here and like the platform, but also their experience pre and post learning, moments. Like say like after training, like is there manager support in there, and are we making room for that as L&D specialist or ID? So I think maybe learner experience design maybe is a little bit broader, and UX definitely overlaps with what we're doing here with an LMS, right? To make it accessible on this. That's a great question. T, I don't know if you want to add anything to that about that question.
No, I was going to add a little bit to what Shannon offered before. You always want to minimize friction. So whenever a learner can predict where something is on the screen, you can minimize that cognitive load, right? And any friction to the learning. You want people to be able to access what they need in the right amount of time, right when they need it, without having to toggle do too many clicks or have to figure something out, because you really want the learning to happen in the experience, not in finding it or locating it. So I just wanted to talk about minimizing friction and cognitive load when you are locating yourself on a page or accessing content.
I love that. So helpful to remember that cognitive load aspect, right? And minimizing friction, because it's already hard enough to make time for learning. We don't want to make it harder. All right, so the third element we're going to talk about is a consistent layout. So when you think about your learning experience is an extension of your brand experience or your customer experience as a whole. Often you have maybe a brand team or even a customer experience team thinking about the customer experience of the end-to-end customer journey or the brand experience. How do people experience your brand, interact with your brand at each step of their journey, but from before becoming a customer to becoming a customer, even after being a customer. And something that's like really important to keep in mind is, it doesn't have to be the same, right? But let's think about Salesforce Trailhead, right? Really popular education program. Most people are familiar with it. So it's very clear that this is a part of Salesforce, right? They were not trying to fool anybody that it was not related to Salesforce. So it says Salesforce right there. Even if you look at kind of those visual elements, some of the colors are tying together, the icons, the font, even the little animal character people that they have. It's all kind of tying the brand to the kind of academy brand. So again, wanted to share another example. So this is impact.com. There's really awesome people. This is their website homepage. This is their learning platform homepage. And so if you look at the two of them, you can kind of see, okay, we've got a similar kind of navigation going in the header, boom, over to the learning experience. If we look at the way that they're using font, the way that they're using rounded buttons, we're seeing that kind of continue over here in the platform, right? So there's kind of this unity, consistency of visual presentation. And I know it sounds like a really small thing, but it's actually about trust, right? Like we trust what is familiar. And so consistency helps us to build the sense of comfort, familiarity, trust with our learners. And so I just think like they've done a great job. I actually loved, so this is the Sasquatch as a referral marketing platform. And so they did the kind of this co-course and incorporated Sasquatch's brand into some of their visual design here while holding true to their actual kind of brand, which I thought was really well done. This is another page you can see kind of, if you went to the catalog, how it carries over. There's consistency even in the characters that they've created. Another great example, I think, is also around how do we design our content? Is there some consistency here? And so with no context, this image makes no sense to you. But back in November, if you were on Underscore, we had talked with Kinesso. So Kinesso is part of a larger global media brand kind of portfolio. And so the education team at Kinesso covers a variety of products. I think something like 21 products. And so when their education program leaders came in, they realized, okay, like this product over here is supported with this type of content. This one's supported in this way. And it wasn't really a consistent experience. And so what they did is they kind of pulled back, went to the drawing board and said, okay, how do we want learners to experience our products? What is it that they need to know? How do we create a learning experience, the learner journey for them that's pretty consistent for each product so they know what to expect when they get there? So this is for one of their products, Audience Console Essentials. You'll notice they have an introduction, benefits, activity, and then a looking ahead. This is a different product called Audience Hub Essentials, or it's Audience Hub. The program's called Essentials, but they have an introduction, benefits, activity. The only difference here is they had kind of a looking ahead for this one product and not so much for here. And so there are some small differences, but for the most part, they're kind of continuing this format so that when people are looking to learn about a product, they know exactly what they're going to get when they start looking at this learning path. I think the same can be said about help content, right? Like, does all of your help content follow the same format? Do you have a template for how you do this? Because sometimes you have articles that have a table of contents and jump links, and then other times not. Sometimes they have a video, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have screenshots, sometimes they don't. Like, and you can tell, you know, with some products, you can tell that different people or different teams created support articles or documentation because there really wasn't a standardized experience. And so that's really important. So people, again, like kind of know what to expect and they know that they can find what it is that they're looking for. So Jordan, Tia, I will pass it over to you if you have anything else on and just that consistency of the learner experience.
Yeah, something came to mind. Go back, I think it was 2 slides to where the buttons were. It was really cool. Oh, that one right there. Yeah. So one thing that stood out to me here with this example is the clear call to action to the learners. So like they know that these topics are things they're invited to get started with, and they're just not like learn more. Or they know that they're going to go to something that they get to be involved with. And so I think in your learning programs, when you market things, email, put like tiles on your screens, like knowing what their next steps are is always really crucial. Even in like your e-learning, knowing that what they're doing next is going towards a valuable action. So I love that call to action there with those buttons. Even though I'm sure they can click anywhere in the picture, but they make it clear this is clickable. We're inviting you in. Come do something, to get started. So I thought it was a really cool example of that.
I was going to say the same as Jordan. Using action verbs, of course, we all know that really drives the outcome for the learner, so they know what's expected of them. And so, going back to what Shannon said about trust, it's like a relationship you're building with your learners, especially when it's self-paced, asynchronous, and you don't get to meet them. It's not instructor-led, and so you really want to still build that trust and establish a like a just establish a relationship so they know what to expect from you and you know what to expect from them. So using action verbs and outcome oriented tiles that really drives learning. And it can even drive completions, right? Because people know what you expect of them. Oh, right here, I create something. So let me click in here and I'm expecting to create something.
I love that you both called that out to that we sometimes it feels a little like, well, don't you know that you click the button to get started? But we do want to be explicit, right? That idea of clear is kind. We don't want to be clever. We just want to be really clear with what we're asking of learners. All right. Element number 4, remember there's 6, so we're getting there. Element number 4 is accessibility. So what is accessibility? Why are we talking about it? Because we want to make sure that we design for everybody, right? Not everybody learns in the same way. And so when we're thinking about making learning accessible, it's making sure that we're accommodating people who learn differently. Maybe they have some auditory disabilities, cognitive learning or neurological disabilities, physical disabilities, speech or visual disabilities. And these can take a variety of forms, right? Like we might jump to like, let's say visual disability. We might think, okay, someone's blind, but it could also be visually impaired. It could be that they're maybe dyslexic, which probably also falls under like learning disability. But even color blindness, like I had never really thought about this before, but my husband's colorblind. And so it's like if we think about color contrast or the colors that we're using on slides or even charts and presentations, not everybody can see that in the same way. And so sometimes we take for granted, that like I see something a certain way or I hear something a certain way, I learn a certain way, but everybody learns differently. And so we want to make sure that everybody is able to access learning. And so there are standards on it. I won't go through it, right? This is not a webinar on accessibility. Jordan recently published a great blog on creating accessible learning. We have a course in experience, so you can enroll in this. It's a free course that our team created on how to create accessible learning. I'm going to drop the link in chat while I'm here. But yeah, just to learn more about like what is accessible learning, how do you create it? And again, this is something that you don't have to know everything about, right? Because one, we can kind of iteratively improve our programs. And I am going to go over in a second some like tips and best practices for creating accessible learning. But this is also something that technology can assist with, right? So great learning platforms, great content authoring tools, they're factoring accessibility into how they create their products, right? So Evolve, which is Intellum's content authoring tool, the majority of those components in there that you would build your e-learning with, those are created with accessibility best practices in mind. And so actually like huge high five to our team because they produced a course that was audited and then certified as WCAG 2.1 compliant. So like just making sure that everyone is able to go through a course. And the other thing I would say on technology is just to ask questions, right? Like know what questions to ask vendors that you're talking to make sure that people are going to be able to access. So whether it's about videos and making sure that people can see captions or making sure that you're able to like put text into a page, something like that. But just some accessibility best practices. Again, you can take the whole course. It's great. One is just to provide transcripts in PDFs. that makes it really helpful. And sometimes even just for learner preference, like I would rather read a PDF than watch a video. Sorry, fam, but it's true. Making sure that readings are text-based and not scanned images. So I've actually been surprised the number of times I've gone to kind of copy text from something and then realize, oh, it's an image. So I can't copy the text. Obviously, that's a little annoying for me, but for some people, they actually, like screen readers. So for people who are visually impaired, they might be using a screen reader, and the screen reader can't read the image, right? It can't, we have to tell it what's within that image, which is the next bullet point here around alt text or alternative text, really describing what it is that we're putting in a visual so that people who cannot see that visual or that visual is being dictated to them kind of can tell what's within that visual. Another one, these two I think really interesting around creating lists using the bullet or number list tools and then adding column and row header cells and tables. I didn't realize this until I listened to a screen reader reading things, right? And you can do this. You can go online and you can get like a free screen reader and have it read something. And honestly, it's super eye-opening to realize, wow, oh, okay, that makes no sense. Like that, the way that that was done, like if someone is listening to a screen reader, they have no idea what I'm talking about, right? Because it's reading things a certain way. And so even just understanding how do we write, how do we create for screen readers so that people who are using screen readers to assist in their learning, they're able to actually receive what it is that we're trying to communicate. Using readable fonts. I mean, I think we're past the whole like script font. I know there's a whole phase. People really like the scripty font, but keep it simple. Arial, Helvetica, like in that kind of sans family. Not using color to emphasize, but bold and italics, that's again, so that emphasis, screen readers can pick up on that emphasis. And then captions and transcripts, right? So I mentioned at the top of this call that you can use the closed captioning on Zoom. Again, just really important so that people who maybe cannot hear so well are able to kind of read and follow along. The last point here is just around not setting audio play. And I just feel like, again, just best practice in general, not just for accessibility, but because most of us were, maybe working from a coffee shop or in an office, or we're walking around opening something on our phones and it starts blaring some video. And then you're panicked, like, how do I turn it off? It's just not what we want when a page opens. So let's just not autoplay videos. Can we all agree? You put a pact in the comments. Jordan, Tia, anything that you would add on accessibility and making sure that our learning is accessible?
I mean, these are all awesome points. I'm not like an accessibility expert, but there are some things about it that like makes learning better for everyone, like you mentioned. Like for instance, let's say you are consistent with your captions on your videos and transcripts for all your videos and all your locales and languages. That means not only can you reach someone who has a temporary or a permanent hearing disability, but also someone who might work in, like, say, a noisy factory setting. They can, they might not be able to sit and read, but now they can listen. Or maybe they're on a bus and they don't want to play blaring, like you said, autoplay, but they can read along with the captions while seeing the visuals. And so, this also increases the ways that we can reach people in their different learning environments as well. So there's always that benefit with accessibility too.
This list seems really exhaustive. I love it, Shannon. I don't have much to add. I just wanted to say I watch everything on Netflix. I read the caption, the whole movie. I actually don't watch it. I read it. I prefer to read as well. It's a preference. And my husband has a deep accent. So sometimes if he's recording a video, I can add a caption. It also allows people to have greater access to what he's saying, right? So if people have accents or they're from different parts of the world, it kind of levels the playing field by just giving us all something to read so we understand the person is saying by not limiting who can speak on video. Because sometimes we can take that for granted that everyone's speaking one language, but they're speaking it with a different accent or the way they say it, even within the same country. So closed caption is just one of the ones that I think just helps everybody for accessibility and preference, learner preference.
That makes me also think of the reverse of English is not everybody's first language. And so a lot of us, we are creating our content in English and maybe we've translated to other languages. But for people who are learning that, right? So I work for an online school. students around the world, but the content was all in English. And so the written portion, the captions and transcripts were really helpful, because if you've ever learned another language, you know it's kind of easier to read and write than it is to listen and speak. So very helpful. Okay, we're going to keep moving. Number 5, it's a learner focus. You're thinking, Shannon, what the heck? We're learning people. We totally understand this. But I thought it was worth calling out, right? That it is really, really important that we understand who it is that we're designing learning for, right? And who our personas are, and how they learn. So for example, one of our customers, they're a global security company. And so they're training tens of thousands of security professionals in different environments. And they have all these different standards and whatever. Actually, recently found out one of my students is employed by this company. It was very fun. I was like, tell me about your learning. But they know that with their security professionals, that there's like different standards that they have to be up to date on. They have to be up to date on everything in order to show up for a shift. So they can't show up if their learning isn't complete. But they also know that these people are on the go. So my student goes to 5 different locations to serve as a security guard. So he's like, constantly on the go to these different places. And so it's really important for that company to create bite-sized learning that was easy to consume. People could quickly keep up with their kind of regulatory things, but then also they can learn on the go. And so mobile first. And shout out to Andres, who helped me like, this is a really cool chip. I love this. But just be able to access it on the go, because some people are, that's where they're learning on the go. And what I loved about that customer and what they knew was they weren't expecting that people were going to be sitting down at their computer and opening up their desktop to then go to their learning management system and take this long certification. I mean, that's the case for in some organizations, and you might need that. But to really understand your learner enough to know, okay, what type of content, how long should the content be? How do we need to deliver this and get this to the learner so it makes sense for them? I just really loved that they were thinking about that as part of their content development and delivery strategy. This is another example. I pulled this from Gusto Academy, but in their learning platform, they're also pointing people to their community and their help center. So they know that not everybody who's going there wants to do more formal learning through certifications and courses. Some people, they might have already gone through the content, but think, okay, I have a really particular question about my use case. I want to ask someone else and I want to get some feedback. Or maybe, they're just stuck on one thing they need to troubleshoot. They need a different type of content. So just to know our learners enough to know, what do they need to learn? When do they need to learn it? Where are they going to learn it? And then serve it up to them in that way. And actually something I think I'd be remiss to like not talk about, and I'm sorry, I don't have a visual for this, is around migrating your content from platform to platform. So I was talking to our SVP of Solutions Engineering recently, and he's like, Shannon, you got to tell the people, when you're migrating content to a new learning platform, actually audit it, because not all of it needs to transfer over, and it's a really good opportunity. So I think he used the analogy of, when you move, right? When you move, you don't just pack up everything and bring it to the new place. Usually you go through and say, oh, I don't know that I want that anymore. I don't know that this makes sense for the space. I don't know that I'm going to use this. And so we're kind of doing that cleaning before we move and we migrate. And so we really want to ask ourselves, is this content still relevant? Is it useful? Are people happy with it? So we can look at maybe those customer satisfaction rankings. If we're doing a star rating on our page, we can look at page views. We can look at feedback that customers have left to understand, okay, what do we keep? And then what do we get rid of? And I was thinking, I recently went to a learning academy for a product, and I didn't know, it's kind of like a newer field that I was learning about, also a new product that had a lot going on. And I was like, okay, I got to learn how to do this. They have an academy. Awesome. So I go to this academy, go to lesson 1, and they said, go use this part of the tool. And I clicked the link and it's gone. The tool is not there. It's like, sorry, this part of the platform no longer works. Try again. I'm like, okay, module 2, maybe module 2 will get me somewhere. And I'm on module 2 and trying to learn. And then again, it kind of links me to something that doesn't work anymore. And so we want that content, right, to be like up to date, because if we think back to kind of ease of use and consistency. Is this trustworthy? Is this reliable? Is this a great experience with our brand? That was not a great experience for me, okay? Because I did not get the answers that I was looking for. It honestly like made me think less of the company, which I hate to say it, but it's true, right? Like I couldn't find what it was that I was looking for. And so by having this thing that wasn't even updated, wasn't up to date, it's like great that you have this academy, but if I'm going to learn something and my experience is that none of it works and none of it actually helps me out, then that's actually worse, you know, than just not having something to begin with. So now I do have a slide for this because a lot of people, when they think about learning experience, they're thinking about the content. Should we have more content so that people can find what it is that they're looking for and so that there's something for everyone? And, you know, what the research shows is that more content is definitely good for learner engagement. So when you think about people coming back to our platform, continuing to learn with us, more content can be helpful there. But what we really want to be thinking about is what turns content into a meaningful learning experience. So is it useful? Is it driving what it's supposed to? So is that efficacy there? And are people able to find it, right? And so all of that is really more important than volume of content. So often when we think we're trying to like fill up our online academy so that we have content there that people can engage with, but we really want to focus on quality and the ease of use before we focus on creating more content. Jordan, Tia, anything on that you would add?
Oh, I feel like there's so much on in that realm for like valuable learning experiences. I think there's so much debate if you go on LinkedIn between like micro learning and how long or long e-learning or how long video should be. Thankfully, there is some research and science about like ideal video length and the drop off for attention. But like, there's also the big part of it is you can have a great short piece of video, but if there's no built-in space for application, reflection, you know, going back on the job and doing it, then no matter how good that little videos you produce, it can fall flat. One of my favorite reminders is Merrill's First Principles of Instruction that talks about, you know, making it task-based and relevant and, you know, having application and demonstration. And like just having those core things to always remember is super helpful. And also, like, it doesn't always have to be high tech. I've had some wonderful, like, low tech learning experiences, and I've had some really horrible, fancy schmancy high. You know what I'm saying? I remember one time I was reading a book to learn a new language, and every single page it had practice translation sentences, and you take an index card and cover up the answers, right? So it's very low tech, but I would like translate in my head and then pull down the index card. I get instant feedback every single line. Whereas a lot of our e-learning might wait to the very, 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 very end of a whole module before there's any feedback if we're lucky, right? Or after the assessment when you've already taken it. So that ongoing feedback and the built-in time for practice and reflection to me is like can make a low tech on the napkin piece of learning great too, you know? So
Jordan kind of stole the show with that one. That was a great example, Jordan. I will just add that instead of the concept, just looking at this slide you have up right now of more content, thinking of the right content. And how do you know your content is right? User data, right? So look at those ratings and the feedback. Also, you want to, when Jordan said that, it just like sent off a million ideas. Knowledge checks and closing that feedback loop is so important. So not waiting to the end to do that grand assessment. Like a lot of us remember from when we were in school, we had this big test, and by that time, you don't even remember what you don't remember, right? But throughout, if there are these smaller knowledge checks throughout your learning experience, it really enhances the experience. So just thinking as the learner, of course, always putting the learner first. And not thinking about more content, but the right content. So actually, sometimes removing content is the right way to go. If you see no one's engaging with it, it just becomes, again, overload. Like they don't want to see it. And it's actually a distraction on the site. And if you remove that tile, you might put something else that can be more meaningful to the learning experience.
I am so grateful for both of your insights. And I think it really speaks to there's elements that are kind of content delivery and some that are technology. And then some are around how do we just keep that learner top of mind and think about how people learn. And also kind of that iterative improvement where we don't have to do all the things from day one. Nobody expects that, but can we learn and improve as we go? All right. Last element here is around personalization. I'm going to talk about two different types of personalization, tops down and bottoms up. But I'm also going to say, if you have questions, feel free. I know some people have already thrown questions into the Q&A, but feel free to start adding some questions there. If you do have questions about learner experience or anything that you've heard so far, we'd be happy to answer those. And so, okay, so tops down personalization. What is this? This is thinking more kind of how do we create using kind of segments and groups of people? How do we then personalize the learning experience? So this could be learning that's assigned based on stage, right? If someone is a new customer or new employee, you might assign them a certain type of learning, right? Some kind of onboarding. It could also be based on groups or segments. So if you have different audiences that you're educating, so your customers, prospects, partners, employees, or even sub-segments of those audiences, right? So if we're thinking employees, it could be different departments and teams, or executives, managers, individual contributors. For customers, it could even be by, what type of subscription that they have to your product or which products they have access to. You might kind of personalize the learning, right? Because let's say a customer has access to product A, but not B and C. Maybe we don't want to serve up B and C because it's not relevant, or we want to serve up a variation of B and C that introduce them to what they don't have access to, but they totally should. And we can use that for expansion and awareness. But it's not going to be probably helpful to teach them how to use something that they don't know how to, that they don't have access to. So this tops down personalization, we can customize a page. So I told you earlier, I'm going to rag on myself a little bit here because I'm overdue in completing my required learning. But this is, again, that tops down. This learning has been assigned to me, and so this homepage is customized to me, to remind me, Shannon, you should have, one, checked off this box because I did go to that event, and also, like, hurry up, complete this learning, like do what you said you would. But you can customize that experience from the top down. I know no one here has ever fallen behind in their learning. I'm sure it's just me. Okay, bottoms up learning is more when we think kind of Netflix style learning experiences. So it's a learning about us as we go and customizing, right? So if I logged into Netflix and Baby Shark popped up, I'd be wondering who is on my Netflix account, because I'm not watching Baby Shark. Or what's the other one right now? Is it Coco Melon? Yeah, Coco Melon, right? So if you have small children in your life, maybe that's showing up in your Netflix. But Netflix knows you, right? And you expect when you log in that Netflix is going to know where you left off, that it's also going to know what you're interested in, other things that you might be interested in based on things that you've watched previously. And so this is where we're really going more from the individual level, learner level, and customizing the experience based on what we know about the learner. So you see in this kind of GIF here, maybe you're using an onboarding experience and you're asking people to tell you about their interests or about their job title or what they're interested in learning. And you're using that to customize the learning experience and personalize it to that learner. It could also be based on the things that they've engaged with, or it could even be, if we think kind of like adaptive learning or how do we coach learners to build up their skills. Maybe it's even personalizing learning based on an assessment that they took and then the questions that they got wrong. And so now we know a little bit more about, okay, maybe this person needs to continue learning in this area or develop more here, and we're able to serve up, personalize that learning. So this is where you can think on your homepage, maybe recommended content, or from a top-down perspective, maybe some filters that people can use to self-serve, self-select the content that they're looking for. Or, if your platform has groups, different ways that you can segment learning, and even down to kind of more minute. So again, ask your learning management system, your vendor, provider, the different ways that you can segment within your platform, how you could use kind of group segmentations, audiences to really better customize that learning experience. So Tia, Jordan, anything on personalizing learning before we jump to Q&A?
I'll just say creating a space where self-service can happen for your learners is critical. Learners like to be able to also create their own experience. So where it says make it smarter, then they have options that of course are pre-described, but then they're able to select the option and then get the learning they want to see at the right time. So having a space and an opportunity to select your learning is really critical for learners. It makes the experience that much more personal, custom. It's like the right touch, and you get a lot of positive feedback from that, as opposed to here's everything we think you should know. It's kind of like this is what we think you should know. From that, what do you also think you should know? So Baby Shark is an option, maybe not for you, What else would you like to see? So yeah, just providing a lot of options and an opportunity for self-service.
I like that because you can learn as you go too. A smart software that's learning from how you interact, right? So I think about if I get an ad on, let's say, Instagram or Facebook, I can say, hide this ad. And they say, well, why? Why do you want that? It's not relevant to me. And then they're using that to further tailor the experience. All right, so we're going to transition to Q&A, but first I'm going to make my regular plug at the end of this webinar. So if you jump off right at the end, if you're going to jump off early, you'll get a little survey. And I just ask that you fill that out because really, one, we want your feedback. We want to know, is this helpful? What did you like? What did you not like? What can we do differently next time? And then also we want to learn, what do you want to learn about, right? So when we host underscore, when we're creating content, we want to make sure that it's relevant, useful, all the things we kind of already talked about. We want to make sure that it's useful for you. So let us know what you want to learn about, hear about. And I also want to make sure that you're aware. Next week, we're hosting a roundtable. It's like a live group discussion. We're going to be talking about AI in customer education. We're also going to be hosting a webinar with TSIA. So you're going to hear from Intellum CXO, Greg Rose, and TSIA's distinguished researcher and VP of Technology Ecosystems, John Ragsdale. And they're going to be talking about education and growth. How can we use education to drive business growth, whether that's through new logo acquisition, expansion revenue, customer retention. So I'm going to pop the link for that in the chat, and we'll move into a time of Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to open up the Q&A box. All right, so okay, how would you apply these principles to learning that's delivered in live sessions like this webinar? That's a great question. All right, Tia, Jordan, whoever wants to, yeah.
Yeah, that one's awesome. So I think of number one, it depends on who the audience is and what is the purpose of it. For something that involves like live product training or live onboarding with people, designing for that learner-centered approach is key too. So having place moments in time for discussion, reflection, pausing for them to apply and try things out, and also have follow-up plan for them so they can be successful on their jobs or with the resources afterwards. Again, like a webinar style, we all know is not the ideal place for learning concrete skills and processes because it's more like a didactic approach. But yeah, for something like they bring up, a live webinar, if you take more of a workshop approach, they can get time for that application and seeing it actually, they can try it on the job as well. So yeah, more you can put in about them and their needs, the always the better. For whoever asked that, please let us in the chat if we answer the question, or if you're curious about more about that, we'd be happy to chime in some more about it.
All right, got a thumbs up. Awesome. All right. Any other questions on learner experience or anything that you wanted to share? Maybe you learned something today. So really our goal was to kind of take this thing that we know is important, right? Learner experience is the number one thing that we say is valuable to our education programs. And certainly want to make sure that people have a positive experience so that they learn, continue learning, they come back. But, what does that actually look like? And so hopefully you learned a few things today in terms of, how technology can support you, questions to ask to make sure that that technology will support you, and then also how you can intentionally design your programs, whether it's figuring out, the length of content, the type of content, modality, how you're going to deliver that to people, how you can incorporate all of that into designing your education program to meet the learner where they are, and make sure that you have like a really great learner experience. All right, so it looks like no further questions coming in. So that's great. I'm just going to assume we answered all the questions. But thank you all for joining us today. It was great to see you, have you on the call, and we will look forward to seeing you next month.